Okay, so we've got a month to go until the IMSA 12 Hours of Sebring. It will be the 73rd edition of the 12 Hours of Sebring. The race itself takes place on March the 15th, which is a Saturday, obviously, because it's an endurance race in the Weathertec Sports Car Championship. So all endurance races of 6 hours or longer are Saturday races. The race weekend as a whole actually starts on the Wednesday, which is a month today, which is the 12th of March, and runs through until the Saturday on the 15th with the big race on the Saturday, which is the 12 hours. Now, one thing I'm really looking forward to is the Aston Martin Valkyrie making its debut in GTP with the Heart of Racing Aston Martin team. The one unique thing about the Valkyrie, the road-going variant, which is actually a road car you can buy, is a hybrid V12. What the Heart of Racing team and Aston Martin have developed is just a really tuned up V12, no hybrid. So they're the only non-hybrid car in GTP. It's going to be interesting to see how that performs. Now, I don't know why, myself personally, why they decided to go without the hybrid system. Whether later on they develop the car further and bring in a hybrid system at a later date with the Valkyrie, we shall see if they decide to further develop the car as the years progress. But they've decided to go with just the standard V12 race engine, which is the biggest engine for cylinders. All the others in GTP are V8s, so they have 4 extra cylinders. Well, that's going to be interesting to see how the Valkyrie performs. It's been doing really well in testing, and it's a beautiful car. So that's a very unique thing about the Valkyrie. On the race itself, obviously you have the split start where you have the GTD classes, Pro and Pro-Am will have their own separate start, and of course you've got the LMP2s and the GTPs obviously having the split start going first. Turn one's going to be crucial. That first lap or two is going to be crucial. There's going to be some kind of start line penalty for someone pulling out of line. What is going to be really interesting is we have seen rain at Sebring before. But if it doesn't rain, it can get very hot and very humid very, very quickly. And when the evening comes, that humidity still lingers, even though the temperature starts to drop off and drop off quite quickly. What we've also seen with IMSA, as well as the World Endurance Championship and the European Nation Le Mans Series, all the endurance series that we love and watch and we thoroughly enjoy, is no tyre warmers. So if it is, let's say, a slightly cooler day, a bit more overcast, maybe there's a bit of rain in the air and temperatures are subdued a bit, heating those tyres up because you've got concrete and you've got tarmac asphalt. It's a mix, and the concrete sections are notoriously bumpy. The bumps of Sebring, respect the bumps. And that runs basically down the back straight from 16 to 17 through to nearly into turn 2 is the concrete section. And then you hit the tarmac, and then there's bits where there's asphalt and concrete, and it's a working airfield as well as a fantastic international race circuit. Now, we know where the action areas are. The bumps are going to be car wreckers. They do suspension, they do components in. Brake wear is going to be a massive issue. We saw that at Daytona, especially with the BMW GTP cars. They had issues with brake changes. Many teams decided to do the brake change at some of the longer races because of brake wear. BMW had some issues there. They're not the only ones that did, but it was noticeable when they had issues. They lost a lot of laps, and that really screwed up their race. In both the GT and the GTP classes, they had brake issues. So brake wear and brake management is going to be crucial. Tyre wear is going to be interesting. We will see teams double stint their tyres at various points and try and save as many sets as possible for the second half of the race or the final third of the race. We've also seen, as in without those tyre warmers, getting the tyres up to temperature. Now, while Sebring can be very hot and humid, if there is slightly cooler conditions, let's say the wind direction's coming from the north and there's potentially that potential for some rain, and it's lower temperatures, we potentially may see the Porsches struggle. So the factory Penske team and the two JDC and Proton teams, they may struggle to switch their tyres on. We've seen Cadillac generally have very strong runs at Sebring. The Acuras, sometimes they're a bit down on pace. And then you've obviously got Lamborghini and BMW. Now, Lamborghini obviously had their issues with their GTP car. At Daytona, they retired quite early on with a mechanical failure, which was disappointing because they were actually running very well at the time. So they will want a good performance, and this is their second time at Sebring. Last year was the car's debut, and they already knew they got the setup probably slightly wrong because they've been testing on slightly more smooth tracks. Sebring is a very bumpy circuit, so getting that suspension set up right where it's not too rigid and it's not too soft, also impacts how the aero performs as well. If you're porpoising, that's going to damage your plank and your aero package, because you're bouncing off like that. And so Lamborghini got that wrong. They were a bit off the pace last year, but it was their first race. So it's going to be interesting to see how Aston Martin and the Valkyrie, how Heart of Racing set up that Aston Martin with downforce and suspension travel. Again, tyre wear is going to be very interesting to see how teams manage their tyre allocation. We will see teams double stint early on. Now, when it comes to the Pro-Am classes, so GT Daytona Pro-Am, or GTT Daytona basically, because you've got GTT Pro, and LMP2, it's going to be interesting to see how long they put their bronze drivers in for. And if they've not gone with the bronze driver or 2 silvers and a couple of pros, it's going to be interesting the minimum drive time, how quickly they burn through their bronze or silver ranked drivers before they put the top end pros in. So like your Ben Keatings, for example, how long would he be in his LMP2 car for his stint? Will he double or triple stint it, or will they take a break and put him in later on? Because he's a very good bronze. He could, if he was younger, he would be a gold driver. I'm not kidding. Ben Keating is one of the best Pro-Am drivers in the world. It's going to be interesting how some of those Pro-Am teams manage the minimum drive time. Also, the weather conditions. As I said, we have seen rain at Sebring before, and that completely changes how the track behaves and the cars behave. Now, yes, when it rains, lap times are slower, you get a lot of spray, but you have that concrete and you have that asphalt mix. And we've seen before it can be quite treacherous in the rain at Sebring. Going slightly offline will be curtains. And if, let's say, there's rain before the race, but it's classed as a dry race because there's no damp patches on the track, again, getting offline will be treacherous. In regards to car reliability and the amount of accidents we have, the bumps are killers. They wreck cars mechanically. This is a true test of engineering and endurance. Now, the LMP2 cars, I think, have had, with this current LMP2 configuration, have got the most data. They will have the most data because that is the most developed car on the grid in regards to from its debut until now. Some of the GT3, the GT Daytona and Daytona Pro cars, for example, in the GT3 classes, some of them are new to some teams. So while they've got data from previous years, they're using new machinery. Now, some of these cars have been well developed, like the Lexus, the Fast & Sullivan Lexuses. They're the oldest GT cars on the grid because the Acuras are now all retired. They've been running that platform for a long time. They have probably the most data from Sebring from all the races that they've competed in. So it'll be interesting to see how they set up that car. It is on its last legs in regards of development, how far they've developed it since Daytona and in the off-season to reach its potential. It's also going to be interesting to see how the balance of performance is figured out from Daytona to Sebring. There'll be some teams that have their BOP turned down and some teams that have it turned up to try and keep the racing as even as possible. I'm looking to the GTPs to be quite an interesting clash, especially in the first 3 hours. That initial 3 hours when you've got a lot more bronze drivers on the track, for example. Some of the young silver drivers, just because of their age, are generally pretty good. Some of these bronze drivers, it gets a bit squeaky bum time with some of the overtakes and some of the driving standards. So that first 3, potentially 4 hours could end your race. We will see contact. We will see cars going off into barriers. We will see mechanicals. I think the attrition rate at Sebring will be higher than Daytona. It is a very, very big field. I think it's an even bigger field at Sebring than at Daytona because the Valkyrie making its debut. So there's one extra car on the grid, which I think will be 64 cars. Or was it 62? It's definitely more than Daytona. So it's a big field. Now, the Sebring track itself, there are some very technical sections and there's some flat out straights, especially the back straight is where you can really open the car up, but that's when you go from tarmac to concrete, and that's where the bumps come into play, and getting offline there is nearly fatal. Pit entry and pit exit, we have seen we've had issues at pit lane entry and pit lane exit in recent races, and so We've seen contact going into the bridge turn at 17. Is it sunset turn? We've seen contact there as some cars are trying to get into pit lane and other cars are trying to go around and over. We have seen contact there. We've also seen some real high profile incidents at turn 1, and turn 6 and turn 7 have also taken their fair share of casualties over the years. So, as I say, managing the tyres, getting the setup right in regards to suspension and aero are going to be crucial, and also driver management, managing when you change your driver over. Some teams, especially the pro teams, may change it every hour. They may get every driver in the first 3 to 4 hours to get them some drive time, and get, keep them fresh, because the temperatures and humidity do take it out of drivers. Here we're talking 80-90% humidity on a average Sebring race, and that will take it out of a driver. The fatigue factor will take it out of a driver. Now, the nighttime racing, the temperatures do drop off, but the humidity does linger well into the nighttime. And we've also seen a fair few incidents when the sun starts to set and when the sun goes down. But for the whole, I think for me, Sebring is my favourite race of the calendar. I prefer it more than Daytona and Indy, and I wish some of the other endurance races like at Indy and Watkins Glen were also longer, but I understand why they're 6-hour races. It'd be nice to see them at like 8 to 10, maybe 12 hours. That could, really test the endurance aspect of the WeatherTec Sports Car Championship. But for me, as I say, Sebring's my favourite race on the calendar. I'm really looking forward to it in 4 weeks' time. I'm expecting a high attrition rate. I really am expecting a high attrition rate. We have to see what the weather does, but we've got a month to wait until we're obviously at Sebring. But right now, temperatures will be higher then than they are now by a fair few Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius, depending on which temperature measurement you use. If you're from the US, you'll use Fahrenheit. If you're from the rest of the world, you use Celsius. I would expect in the Celsius maybe 10 degrees, 15 degrees warmer than temperatures currently are. Although Florida has seen below average temperatures this winter, we're talking in single figures, and Daytona was very, very cold. There was concerns that the night part of the daytime 24-hour would be potentially at freezing or below when it comes to Celsius. So Florida has had below average temperatures this winter. It has seen snow in areas in Florida. It could still be that in March temperatures are still a bit subdued. There could be more rain in the air, and with that lake nearby to Sebring, and I think it's Highland County. With that lake nearby and the fact it is in central Florida, if the wind direction changes and you get a microclimate, that could also impact how the cars handle on the back straight and the front straight going down the pit straight. Could also impact how cars handle going into braking areas and how they handle coming out of corners and going into corners, and also how they handle on the straight and over the bumps. If there's a crosswind or it changes direction, can also impact the weather. But there we go. That's my little preview of the 12 Hours of Sebring. I'm really looking forward to the Aston Martin Valkyrie debuting. Be interesting to see how the Porsche teams do, all three of them. BMW as well, Acura and Cadillac and Lamborghini. Lamborghini, I expect a response. They would be very, very disappointed with their DNF at Daytona. I'm going to be really interested to see which team at the top end performs. LMP2 is always fun because they're all equal cars. The GT classes is going to be interesting to see who just gets their setup right and their driver management right in regards to driver changes. And another thing to look out for is how many laps of yellow will we have this year, because some years we have a lot of the race behind a safety car because of contact, because of cars breaking down, because of cars spearing off into the barriers. I think last year we had a lengthy spell under yellow when one of the Cadillacs decided to flip itself onto its roof, onto a barrier at turn 7. I think it was Pipo Derani coming to lap one of the GT back markers, made contact at high speed, brakes locked up, speared off, and rolled the car onto its roof on top of a tyre stack. That was a lengthy period behind yellow last year. How teams manage the yellow flag periods alongside their tyre management? Do they double stint? Do they short fuel? Do they bring the tank, change tyres? Various complications there. So it could be fun. And if there is a wet race, wet to dry, when to change to wets and off wets could be interesting, but we'll have to see how the weather behaves over the next 4 weeks. But for me for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.